All right, I'm going to start up. First thing, I just wanted to show you this. You notice Apple paid out $60 billion to App Store developers in 2021. So there is money out there to be made. All right, I mean, if you think you've got the next great idea or whatever. And to be honest with you, because I've taught both Android and I've taught iPhone, and there's not that much difference between them. All right, so with the Swift language, which is typically used here, it's changed. There are some things, not just syntactically, but procedurally that you do different. But I think going from one to the other isn't like a humongous stretch. All right, that was first thing. Second thing, I don't know if you guys have any interest in this, but I'm just going to show it to you. This website has changed, in my opinion, for the worse over the years. But if you go out to raywenderlich.com, like I said, I'm not pushing this site as I had in the past, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But Ray Wenderlich is the guy who owns this company. All right, and they have stuff in there on both Android development and they have stuff in there on iOS development. Now, the bad news about the Android development is they pretty much have thrown away everything they've got about Java. Not quite, but their books, etc., they're all now just going on Kotlin. What they used to do was they used to have tons of articles out here, and I think they still do if you go in and search, where they do projects and stuff like that, and eventually, possibly at least, they'd be turned into a book. All right. Well, the bad thing is now basically what they do is more than articles. They'll just, quite often, they will go and they will just put out, like, sometimes the first chapter of a book or whatever. So, I mean, if you have any interest in that, you can go out there, you can join, or you can basically set up an account for free. And they do email you fairly regularly asking you if you want to become a regular member. And it's upwards of $300 a year. Might be a little more than that. I don't really remember. All right, let me finish the attendance. No, I'll just throw that in here. There we go. All right, and then we will start up. All right, so the first thing I'd like to show you is, if you look on the screen, please, I'm going to quickly run this program and to explain why it didn't work before, because I foolishly forgot something. So now when you see it, you come in here, welcome to Android. If you put nothing there, if you look on the bottom of the screen now, you'll see the toast come up. I'll wait till it stops spinning. Maybe it won't stop spinning. I don't know. I'll try it like this and see if it takes it or not. So there it is. You didn't input anything. There's the toast. On the other hand, if I come up here and I put in my name, and if I want to remove the keyboard now, I can just click the check mark here, or I can move that up. I thought usually it removes it, and there it is. Okay? So let's talk about why this didn't work yesterday. All right? The biggest thing is right here. I forgot to call this. Basically, view is whatever it is you're working on, and you end up passing view in to most everything that you work on. Now, everything? No. That's why I said most everything you work on. So you end up passing that in quite a bit, especially something that you call directly, for example, like from a button, which is what we were doing there. All right, so that was the first thing. The other thing I changed, just to show you, was I added this at the beginning here. So I called a new routine. Clear output and set the focus. Since I'm calling that from a thing with the view, I didn't need it. But what are we doing in here? Well, this is how you can blank out, and if it was an edit text, it would be done the same way. But this is a text view. This is where we're putting the answer. So we're making sure, I don't know if you call it the answer, but the name or whatever it is after you click the button, we're making sure it starts blank. This is how you set the focus. You use request focus. Okay? So take a quick look at this, and, again, these things right here were added for us. These things right here we added, and you'll notice that they are in alphabetic order. All right. Again, what we did inside of our main activity was we did come up with one constant, and we came up with 3 things. Now you'll notice, and I think I said this yesterday, but on the off chance I did not, if we go back in here and we look at the activity main file, you'll notice we have 4 controls. We don't need to account for our title because we're not doing anything programmatically with the title. So there really is no, we could have done that. So we could have added something for that, but it really makes no sense to do that. All right. All right. And so these, again, our edit text, our text view, and our calculate. The order in which you put those, of course, does not matter here. The order in which you put them down here does not matter. And I brought this up yesterday. I put it in as we are opening up the means of communication by doing this. That might not be the best explanation, but it's the one I'm going to give. All right. And this, again, had we gone in and put in that routine first before we set the on click, so had we done that first, literally just keyed it in, we wouldn't have gotten any errors. But then when we went over to here and we clicked on the button and we went down to the on click routine, what you would see then is there would be a down arrow. See that? And you can choose it that way. Now, some people, it doesn't really matter. Not only that, in a week, 2 weeks, whatever, we'll look at the other way that you can set up buttons with click listeners. I wanted to let it be shown in the textbook before we go over it. Now, I thought about this, for lack of better words, kind of long and hard today. All right, and I thought instead what we're going to do, I am going to start going through our book. I don't want to go through 50 pages. So I went back and I rebuilt this morning while my early class was taking a test. I did the Bmi program as an Android app. So we're going to do that together. All right. But before we do, I'll bring this up. So this is it. And again, this is the URL for it. I sent this to everybody. You all should have a copy of it. All right. Now, I will tell you, I want you to hear this. All right. This says Android Developer Fundamentals. Okay. Now, if we go out as an example here, if I go out to YouTube and I key in Android Developer Fundamentals, all right, what I'm going to find is there's a whole bunch of lectures on this. Now, you'll notice they're not new. All right. In fact, they're old as far as being 4 years old. All right. 2 of the people who teach them, my guess is, English is not their first language. They speak just fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way they speak. But their accent is a little thick. This woman here, I would say English was her first language because she's got red hair, etc., that one that's in there. They're not bad. They're not good. All right. When I taught the class a year ago, we watched several of these. And they were, I asked them afterwards, what'd you think? They were lukewarm, the class, about whether or not they were good or not. And I've just decided this year I'm not going to show them, but you can go through them, of course, if you want, by yourselves. But I'm not going to do that. All right. So this is fairly new, September 2018, so it's about 3.5 years old. The language really has not undergone a lot of major renovations since then. So virtually everything that was in there should still apply. If you do want to see the older, I should say, book, there's version 1 and there's a link there. That's fine. All right. Now, course materials, because one of these course materials that's in here, I don't think I gave you. All right. I may have, I may not have. But they talk in here about, it says this concept reference teaches you what you need to learn, and then code labs. Well, there's the code labs, and I want to give you the URL. I could have sent it to you, I guess. Is that it? Well, let's double check. Yeah. So that's it right there. So let me copy that and put it out here. And yes, you will want to copy this. So let me change the size. How about 36? That'll work. All right. So again, you don't need the HTTPS, etc., but you probably need most of the rest of it. All right. So I'd like you to go out there, if you would, right now. There. Go out to there. If you go out to here, and it looks like this, then you're at the right place. All right? Every unit that's in this book, to my knowledge, at least the first 4, they've all got assignments with them. Some of them are things, are just like, open this page and do this. You know, where you aren't even going to see a lot of feedback. Some of them ask you to do things. I am going to ask you to try, in addition to your homework, to do the code labs for everything. Why? Because I want you to learn this stuff. All right? Nothing would make me happier than if one of you would either A, at the, you know, by the, maybe this time next year or whatever, send me a link and say, hey, I've got this paid app and I'm actually making money off of it. That'd be great. All right, that's not a testament to me. That's a testament to you. All right, or B, you actually got a job doing Android development. I think that would be great. All right, and I think this will do nothing but help. All right, enough. I don't want to sermonize, so oops, not that. All right. So it says, what does this course cover? Well, Unit 1 is basically what you think it would be. It's getting started. I have no desire to come in here and read to you out of here. So you won't hear me reading to you. All right? But it's your typical first type of chapter that's in a book. You're not going to have any written tests in here. I'm not sure if Mr. Smith is giving written tests or not. I think a year ago he did. All right, you know, but he just pulls stuff out of here and then asks people about it. I just don't feel like doing that. Okay? All right. So, Android is the most popular platform for developer apps. It is. In fact, it is way more popular than iPhone, iOS apps. The last I heard, it was like 75 to 25. All right, and it may not be that big anymore. You know, it's funny because my wife's been having problems with her phone. She's like, would you look at this? And I'll be like, no, because I don't want to screw up her phone. That's the last thing I want to do. So she'll have my daughter look at it when she comes over. She keeps saying, Mom, why don't you get an iPhone? Because I think they suck. All right, and my wife doesn't have much, you know, doesn't think much more of them. Now, if you have an iPhone, I could care less. You know, if you say, I got an iPhone, I love it. Good for you. All right. All right. A lot of this stuff it's going to make sense to you. Again, Android provides a touchscreen interface for interacting with users. We don't get that much into the touchscreen stuff in here. All right. I think it's talked about a little bit later on in the book. All right. Now, again, I love it when it says stuff like this. It's easy to develop apps. Well, again, that's relative. And what I mean is, what's easy for me and what's easy for you could very well be two different things. All right. We are using Java in here. Java and XML, and we're using Android Studio. So everything that they mention in here, we are using. All right. And they go through, you may or may not remember, but one thing that we did in the C# class is probably Chapter 1 or Chapter 2. We looked at a picture similar to this one. Wasn't identical, of course, because it's a different language. One thing that's interesting to note when you get down to level 3, notice what their libraries are written in. No, they're not written in Java. They're written in C and C++ because by and large, those languages will run faster than Java will run. All right, so at the top end, you've got the user writing their apps, and at the bottom end, you've got the operating system. All right. and you can see the different stuff that's in between it. Okay? I mean, you directly work with the API framework. You may be calling some of these libraries, but you're not technically working directly with them. All right? And we're using the runtime. Again, if you have a desire, you can read more about that at your leisure. All right. Now, one thing, again, you may have heard about this already. It's no big thing. But the next several pages, they go through the different versions. And they always have said that they name the versions after sweet treats. That's why as you look in here, you got cupcake, you got donut, eclair, froyo, which was, again, short for frozen yogurt, gingerbread, honeycomb, ice cream sandwich, jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, marshmallow, nougat, and Oreo. So an important thing to realize right here. Look at the last version that they're showing. All right, that last version that they're showing is version 8. We are now up to version 11. All right, and you can go out there. They've even somewhere in here, and you saw this. Yeah, when we went in and we asked what version we wanted to use for our support, etc. If you want to, you can go look in there and it'll show you all the other ones. All right. All right, the challenges for Android app development. One of the things that I'm working on right now, and it's going to be interesting because if I get it to work the way I think I will, I'm going to demo it on middle schoolers when I teach them this summer. And that is with both you guys. We never really developed a mobile-first website, but that's what we're going to do next year. All right, we're going to start it with mobile, for a smaller screen. Plus, if you've never heard of this before, there is a browser that you might want to take a look at. No, it's not Chrome. It's actually something that's called Blisk. And if you go out to blisk.io, and maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't, I don't know. But the idea is what you can do is you can build up for yourself. Now, they're only showing phones here, but you can set yourself up an environment, and with that environment, you can basically set it up where you can bring up 10, 12, 15 of these things and see what it'll look like on different devices. Now, you've got a simulator that we have in Chrome, but this is much better. It's still a simulator. I don't care what anybody tells you, but it's much better. All right? It's just, you just go out to blisk.io. I'm not telling you, bless you, I'm not telling you to download it or anything. I'm just saying it's something that you may, if you get some time, you may want to take a look at. All right? So when they talk about the challenges for Android, again, building for a multi-screen world. You've heard me say this shtick before, and that is the fact that today more people are using phones and tablets to look at the internet and different apps, etc., than they are using laptops and desktops. In fact, many people will tell you that the desktop is dying. All right? I mean, I know a lot of people who still have desktops and use them. And one of the things they like about them is typically they come with a really big screen. All right, but you can buy yourself an external screen fairly cheap now. So, again, everybody's different. All right, getting the performance right. In a later chapter, we're going to talk again about the Android development lifecycle, where you put your code, why you have to put your code in several, in different places, etc. All right, keeping your code and your users more secure. Well, again, we don't really talk that much in this program about security. Somehow I think we need to bring it more into the program because it's an unbelievably important topic. All right? And if you go out and you read any of the publications, all right, that what you're going to find is at least once a week probably there'll be something that was compromised because there was some kind of a security breach. All right? Making sure that your app is compatible with older platform versions. We kind of looked at that already. All right? And understanding the market and the user. So they break each one of these down. All right? A key thing in here, if you look up on the screen right now, it says, for example, to save the user's battery power. Typically, that's not something that you have to think about when you're running on a desktop or a laptop. All right? But it is something that becomes more important with a tablet and even more important with a phone. Now, I don't know about you guys, but there are certain apps that when I use them, I can't believe what pigs they are and how fast they drain the battery. All right? All right, again, we've talked about security. They give some stuff in here. We'll look at some stuff in here for security, but typically it'll be in the guise of when we're about to put something into a database, if it's sensitive, we'll want to hash it first. We'll look at stuff like that later on in the semester. All right. Again, remaining compatible with older versions. We've talked about that a little bit. So it says your first app. We could have gone through and done this too. All right. But I think it's like a simple timer or countdown thing. It's something like that. I don't remember. But they go through the whole development process here. All right. I'm not going to sit there and read these to you because they should make sense. It's pretty much the same development process you'd have with almost anything that you'd be developing. All right. So you now know that when you start up Android Studio, this is what you get. And there shouldn't be anything that's in here that's a surprise to you. All right. Now this is an older picture. You notice here it's got include C++ support and include Kotlin support. The one that we had a drop down here that said Java or Kotlin. It's just one way that it's changed over time. Personally, I'm surprised that Google doesn't keep this book up to date every year. All right, but it seems to be about every 3 years. In fact, the one before this I think was 20. Yeah, that would have been 3 years. 2015. All right, so I guess there was no 2021 that I know of because I haven't seen that out there. All right. So, choosing target devices in the minimum SDK, we talked about this before. And we talked about what's the good thing and what's the bad thing about this. The good news is if you have the latest, most up-to-date version, you can use all the bells and whistles available in that version. The bad news is people running older versions, it's not that it's going to break on there, but it may not do exactly what you think it would do. It's kind of like, and we've talked about this in the AWD1112 class, and that is when you talk HTML5. If you've got people with older browsers, a lot of times their browser doesn't understand what it is you're trying to do. So for example, if you put in a number text box, you know what that is, and you put it in an older browser, it's just a text box because it doesn't understand the number part. Same kind of thing would apply right here. All right. The activity, again, look at it an activity as basically being a screen. All right. I think at least that's the easiest way to look at it. All right. Now, this is a little better than the picture I showed you because it's smaller, but again, virtually every program we do in here, we're going to choose empty activity. All right. So that makes it easy if nothing else. All right. Now, if you choose no activity, because there is one in there that says no activity, the big difference is you don't get that activity main file, all right, where it's activity, it's main activity.java and activity_main.xml. You have to build them yourselves if you want to. All right. So as it says, you can go in and you can do a lot of customization with that. All right. So a couple things that I do want to show you when you take a look. When you look here, again, this has changed a little bit, but hopefully already by almost next week, we're going to be adding more than one screen onto this. But if you look on here, notice that the activity name is main activity and the layout name is automatically basically the same thing but flipped with an underscore between it. All right. The recommendation is always that you take your main one and you call it main activity. Now, next week, let's say we use the Bmi program that we're going to start on today. So let's say that, you've got one that's called Bmi activity. All right, let's just say it's called, no, we got main activity. Now we want one that's going to have our results because we're going to have another page. We would probably call that results activity. Again, the recommendation is that you put, not as an extension, but at the end of every one of your activities, the word activity. You don't have to. All right. And virtually always you'll want to generate a layout file and you'll want to have backwards compatibility. Again, I think that looks a little bit different today too. So if you need more, they're explained right there. Now, this is very similar to what I gave you a hard copy of yesterday. It is not identical, but it's similar. The one that I gave you was a little bit more detailed. which is why I gave it to you. All right, and I did want to mention, I'm going to go back to this just for a second here, because Gabriel, I don't know if you were the one asking about this yesterday or not, but if you come over here, and you can notice how this is blue right here, it says select design surface up here, and if I click this, I don't need that blueprint in there, so now I have just the blueprint. Now I have them both. Well, most of the time, you're not going to do a flaming thing with a blueprint, so I just go to design. Then, the way it should be set up is if you click in here, control, and you do your mouse wheel, you can make it a lot bigger. So I don't know if that was what you were having the problem with yesterday, or if it was the text or what, but that is one way to make it, typically to make it bigger, so it's easier for you to work with. All right, plus, it is totally, any of these things that are in here, you can collapse these down so they're almost nothing, basically. All right? I'm not going to run through these because we did talk about them yesterday. All right. I did mention that on the project pane that's there, probably the only two that you're really going to use are Android and Project. There are a few settings that in order to do certain things, you have to be in the project pane. Other than that, almost always, you're best off remaining in the Android pane. All right? And again, what I'm giving you are my feelings. So as we get going, you might come up with something, I don't agree with what you said. That's fine. That's fine. All right? All right. It says when you first create the project, again, it creates a bunch of stuff in here, including these Gradle scripts. All right? And again, we will be using Gradle in here if we have to do something like A, change our SDK or the version that we're using, or B, and I mentioned this yesterday, when we go in and we want to add things like Recyclerviews and we want to add things like Glide, which is an external library. Now, what used to happen, all right, just to show you this, what used to happen, and I don't think you have to do it anymore, but what used to happen is if you came in here and you typed in, so like I'm going to come in here and search, and I'm going to type in Recyclerview. All right, and it'll make a lot more sense when we get to that point. Recyclerview. All right, and there it is. Now I could take it and drag it out there. I'm not going to do that. But I believe now when you do that, you get a little dialogue that'll come up that'll basically say to you, do you want to make the changes in your Gradle file that you need? So there's some automation that's being done. What used to be done, or what you used to have to do, is you'd have to go out to developer.android.com, find the dependency for that, copy it to your clipboard, open up your Gradle file, and put it in. All right. And again, that might not sound like a big thing. It isn't, but it is expected that it's being put in the right place in the file, etc. All right. So if you want a little bit more on that, again, we'll talk about that later. All right. The code, again, goes in here, and as you'd probably guess, if you haven't already, this is going to change a little bit, because let's suppose we wanted to add another activity in here right now. It's not the Java folder we want to click on. It is right here. It is the folder that holds our package. You want to right mouse click on that and basically choose new and then class again, kind of like we did when we were in the IntelliJ IDE. All right. Again, I've already mentioned to you about main activity, and I've told you that these two test things, you're best off not even touching. They talk in here about activity main. We've talked about some of this stuff. All right. The R that you see, if you remember when we did this, where are we here? Go back to my code here. These, every one of these right here, that stands for resource. That is linking up to something in the res file. And again, I gave you my verbiage yesterday was that basically it's allowing the Java programming language and the XML file to communicate with one another. They are two different languages. And they explain here, drawable, again, all your images go in there. Layout, we're going to end up creating our own layouts, but not for a while yet. All right. Mipmap, I showed you that yesterday, and that's going to where you put your different sized icons. and it all has to do with resolution. So, I mean, what's the big thing in here? Well, again, typically if the smaller the resolution, the less quality you'll have. Sometimes it'll be a lot bigger, etc. So when we get to the point where we're going to be saving something or trying to put it up to the App Store, that's when that'll become a little bit more important. All right. The values folder, we looked at this a little bit yesterday. We're going to do some more today. In fact, we're going to create a new project together in just a few minutes. And when we do, we're going to start by going into our strings file and setting up our strings right away. Everything that we do today, I'm giving you a hard copy. I've got it all right there. All right? And I'm not going to lie to you either. I went and did the whole thing, and I broke my own cardinal rule. I went back. I had an old version of it, and I knew I had to make a bunch of changes because it wasn't doing everything I wanted it to do. But I wasn't putting in a little code, then testing, putting in a little code, then testing. I put in a lot of code. Then I tested. And there's a couple things on there that don't work. All right, we'll figure them out. They're not really terrible things. It's more on the error side that it's not working. All right. Then they go in here and again they talk about the tool palette. We talked about that yesterday. Talk about your design area basically. We talked about that yesterday. All right. We talked about the component tree yesterday. All right. Now it used to be, and it may not sound like a big thing to you, but I've heard people who are ticked about this. And that is, it used to be, so look on the bottom here, see where it says design in text? That's how you flip back and forth. But today, when you're doing that, if I come down to here, if I go to my XML file and I go down to the bottom, there is no. It's all up here. All right, and oh, that's the wrong file. Activity main, there we go. It's not down here anymore. You've got to go and do it up here. And is that a big thing? Not at all, especially if you're just learning it now. But if you're somebody who for years was going down here all the time, and now you can't, it bugs you. All right, it's amazing the stuff that bugs developers. All right, I maybe have told you guys about this, but I'll always remember. I went to a C programming language conference in Kansas City one year, and I got to go with a guy that I was working with. And there were two people presenting, and they were really good. And the one guy was saying, a lot of people think that you should be doing this, but I think that's wrong. I think you should be doing it like this. And the guy who was with him said, I think you're wrong. Bottom line is, we had to pull them apart because they were starting to fist fight with one another. Seriously. These were two presenters at a conference. It was like, wow. And my friend Bill, who was with me, is like, did that just happen? Yeah. I mean, it's for people, it's their lives, and that's why it means so much to them. All right. We started looking at the code. We're going to get into that more so today. They explain, just like I did, what the package statement is, what import statements are. So it's the same stuff I gave you yesterday, but where I'm giving it to you in words and sentences, they're giving it to you in paragraphs and pages. That makes sense? All right. They've got more about the manifest file in here. Again, we're not going to really work much with the manifest file for a while. We'll take a look at it later. All right. All right. And again, they explain it. This is a fairly new feature, this auto backup that's set equal to true. All right. And it is. You should leave it the way it is. It'll automatically do some backup work for you. All right. I don't worry about the app icon right now. The icon, just so you know, unless you change it, we'll talk about that. Not today. All right, we'll change the icon. All right, if I think about it, we'll do it either for tomorrow or Friday. And when we do the BMI, it's going to look like this. And this is just the default Android thing. But we'll put like a BMI something in there. I'll go out and grab a BMI thing and then show you how to put it in. All right. All right. Label and string resources. Well, the thing is, again, with strings, you know how to use those now. There's no big surprise. There is at least one way of doing it faster than the way I showed you. I just don't remember what it is right now. It'll either come to me or one of you will find it. And if you do, feel free to share it with the rest of the class, including the instructor. Totally fine. All right. Again, the theme sets the app's theme, which, as it says, basically It's the way you want things to work. All right? And notice there is a whole lesson that's on themes. All right? Now it says, understanding the build process, eventually what we will want to do, if we want to take this and we want to put this out in the App Store. I showed you build yesterday, but if you look, one of the things that's down here is not analyze APK, but there's build bundles APKs. See that? The APK file, which is the Android package file, all right, that's what needs to get basically uploaded to the App Store. All right, and if it isn't done right, they'll deny it. Now, they're not nearly as picky as the Apple Store, not at all. Apple looks for reasons to not, because I've talked to people at least at the Apple Store, and that's what they've told me, that they look for reasons to not allow apps, okay, because they want to make sure that everything that's in there is decent. So many people put apps in the Google Play Store. I think maybe I've even told you this. The average price of an app in there is 99 cents. And the reason for that is there's so many free ones in there. And if you see that, if you filled out all their paperwork and done everything and it's free, even if your app kind of sucks, they're probably going to accept it. All right? So it says when you create a project, Android automatically generates the necessary build files. So a lot of this stuff is happening, and it's happening behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about it, which I think personally is a good thing. One thing I mentioned to you in here, and this is the file I showed you, that if you make changes in the build.gradle file for your module, you have to sync it back up again then. All right? Otherwise, those changes will not take effect. All right. And that's all explained in here too. Okay. All right. And a lot of this is internal stuff like build types. I can't tell you anything about it because I've never had to use it. All right, dependencies, etc. We'll get into some of that. And if you want more on actually syncing, there it is. All right. Now, we did go in yesterday, and as it says, run the app on an emulator or a device. Now, one of the problems that I had yesterday, you may or may not have noticed, I ran it on an old emulator, all right, from last year when it was around version 26 or 28, and now it's 31. That's why it had some problems when I started doing my initial build. All right, bottom line is you want to make sure your emulator is pretty much always up to date. So if you leave here and you come back to this a year later, you might want to go in and drop whatever emulator you're using and re-put it out there, all right? Because this stuff is just being updated all the time. As I showed you online, I showed you where the AVD was, and that's what it is, Android Virtual Device Manager. All right, we went through how to create one of these. I mentioned to you, now it says here, notice the size and how they change. I don't think they show the size anymore. Maybe they did, I don't remember. But notice they're different sizes. I have just been told that these are really low estimates, that with all of the internal files and stuff that this has to manage, that it's more upwards of 6 gig. All right, and there are a lot of different files when you go in and you run a program that get created for you. I told you about this, that now we're talking now a good 7-8 years ago when I was at the college I used to be at, and I couldn't get this stuff to work, so I just started reading manuals. Then I brought in a guy from our help team, and he knew nothing about it, but he wanted to learn. That was the right guy to bring. So between the two of us, he was the hardware guy, and we got it to work. All right? So they talk in here about resolution, density. We talked yesterday about DP, which are scalable pixels rather, DP, and that's everything except your text. We talked about SP, which is not size pixels. SP is scalable pixels. DP are density pixels. All right, a little bit of that is discussed right here. How to run it on a virtual device is shown right here. We went through that yesterday. What I will try to do, I promise, In that room right there, I've got 7 or 8 tablets in there. And I'll bring them out later on in the week. Now, I'm going to tell you there's probably only about a 50% chance that they're going to run. And I'll tell you why. Because purposely, Mr. Corrigan buys cheap ones. They cost about, he gets them out, and a lot of times he goes out and looks on, eBay and whatever, and he buys them for $75 or so a piece. The good news is they work. The bad news is they work until there are major changes where you need a certain operating system, etc., and those things aren't really upgradable. All right, so we'll try it and see if it works. The problem is, the reason that I didn't ask him, because usually every 2 years I do ask him for new ones, and he's always gotten them for me. Last year, they never even wanted to use them. They were just happy with the emulator all the time. All right, so I didn't really want to have him outlay and get about 10 of these and pay $700 or $800, and then have us not use them. All right. So these are the steps in here on how you actually run this too on a physical device. All right. All right, I think we're up to page 50, so we're just about halfway done. So I'm going to stop here. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to write another application. The completed application I'm going to give to each and every one of you right now. All right, there are several pages, unfortunately. So I'll tell you what, if you would, just take this whole packet, pass it down twice, everything. I'll pass that once.
All right.
Now that's yours.
All right, cool.
You pass that down once, and then that's yours. All right. And for anybody who says, this kind of sucks, why didn't you just give us a hard copy? I'm going to key it in again myself. All right. So I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not doing. We're going to see how much of this we get done today. All right. Whatever we don't get done today, if anything, we'll do tomorrow. All right. And we'll finish going over this first lesson tomorrow. All right. Friday, as of right now, will be designated as a complete lab day. If we only have one day, so if it takes us 2 days to finish this lesson and to go through and put in this program, then Monday will also be a lab day. So either Friday and Monday, probably that's the way it'll work, because Friday and Monday will both be lab days. All right? And if that means, well, hey, I got it all done in one day, then work on something else. And start looking at lesson 2. All right? That's what will just be going on then. All right, so I'm going to close this. And if you would, please start up Android Studio. I have it started up already, but I'm going to close this project. Now, I've already created it as BMI Android, so I'm going to create a different one. I don't have to. I could just move this folder, but I'm not going to do that. So let's do new project. Again, we want to double-click on empty activity. And I'm just going to call it BMI Calculator. Technically, it's not a calculator, but it's close enough. So you can put a blank space in there if you want to. You can leave the blank space out. Either way is fine. Hopefully it remembered from what you did last time and your package name is now set up with you having to change anything. That should be like that for the rest of the semester now. Now, let's just say, he hasn't said it, but let's say James says to me, I just don't like that. And I have jameswharton.com. If you want to put com.jameswharton. That's okay. All right. Again, the only reason that you put this in as a package name is so that yours is unique from everybody else's. I mean, if sooner or later we'll probably do a to-do list app in here. That may be the one that we go and we put up to the App Store. I don't know. But geez, if you go out to the Google Play Store and you type in to-do list, I don't think it would be a stretch to think you might get 1,000 things back. All right. All right. Your location should also be done before. The recommendation, it used to be that it didn't matter if you already had a folder there by that name, but the recommendation now from what I've read is just leave it off. Don't have a folder by that name. Again, with the language, all right, I want to do this by the end of the year. So if nothing else, we'll take this one we're doing now or another one, and we'll change it over from Java to Kotlin. All right. The real nice thing is if you choose Kotlin and you bring up a Java program, there is a setting in the menu that says convert this to Kotlin. and it'll do almost all the conversion for you. Not all of it, but it'll do the majority of it. All right, so again, we're going to keep it at Java, and we're going to keep it at Lollipop. That's fine. So click. There is no next. Why is this doing this? There we go. All right, so we're going to let it come up here and build everything up for us. I'll make this a little bit bigger if you've not. Is that big enough? Can you read that okay? All right, we're going to do this in a little bit different order. We could do this in any flaming order we wanted to, but what we're going to do is we're going to make our strings first, so we don't have to sit and worry about those. That's the first page of the handout that I gave you. Okay? So when we go out to res and we go to values and we double click on strings.xml, everybody see that? Res, values, double click on strings.xml, there it is. Now, notice that the handout I gave you, the first line says BMI Android because that's what I saved it as before. All right, but I'd like you to, if you would please, to put in lines 3 through 9. That makes sense to everybody? If you don't like the way that I have set this up, as far as notice, like with my BTN exit button, I call it now exit BTN, and I take the extension on the end, or the one that's usually at the beginning, and I capitalize it. Do it whatever way you want. But again, be consistent with the way you do it. That's all I'm asking you. I'm going to just replicate what I have here. And just so you notice, if you look up on the screen here, let's just say I spelled string wrong. Let's say I wrote strong. Okay, and I close it. The system is happy as hell. It's not going to give me an error. Just going to make an ending strong tag instead of an ending string tag. All right? You might have noticed if you look quick, the one I just made for the height, I'm going to copy it. It gives me an error because it says I've already got that. So as soon as I change the name, and now it's totally fine. Mention something about these buttons in just a moment. Now, if you're still typing, don't worry about it. But if you would, everybody, just for a second, if you look up on the screen here, just a couple things that I wanted to mention. All right. Some of them I already said. So again, you can I could make one of these and copy it all the way down. I could have copied it 6 times. All right. Be real careful when you're doing a lot of copying and pasting. That, you know, on this one, if I don't remember to change that to a W, you know, the hint is going to be input weight. All right, not like that's a big thing. It's not. But again, as you look in here, you'll notice the names, the faces on my button will be calc, clear, and exit. And the reason for that is I decided we're not talking about layouts yet. We're going to keep the constrained layout all right? But we're going to put all three of the buttons in the same row. And if I make them all the same width, so they're as wide as the calculate, they're squished together and it looks really bad, which is the reason that I did it that way. So if you've got this done, just do a file save all, and hopefully at least, unless I missed something, and I don't think I did, all right, you can close that now. And that's one less thing for us to worry about. You can put that one page there off to the side. Now, what we're going to do, let's pretend for a minute that we finish this today, okay? So we finish this program today. Now, tomorrow I go through the other 54 pages of Unit 1. Boom, we finished that, all right? Then there's still a little bit of time left, and Mr. Breeding here, he's already finished the first assignment. Let's just say that he has, all right? So, big deal. Why should we care? Well, I want to just show you this if you look up on the screen here, and that is this. We're going to build this, and we're going to use the design view to build it. If you want to start to really understand this stuff, get rid of it and rebuild it using the code. That's how you learn this stuff. All right, so for those of you who have said that to me, how am I really supposed to learn it? That's a really good start. All right, some developers build it totally from code mode, some do it totally from design mode. Some people either use split mode and do both, or just go bounce back and forth between one another. All right, so we're going to go into design mode, and I'm going to change some stuff from yesterday. Not greatly, but you'll see as we get going. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I don't want that hello world. If I wanted to, I just want to show you this. I could move it up there. That'd be fine. But if I do that, please look on the screen. I would want to remove this constraint. I don't want it pinned to the bottom of my screen, right there. So what most people do is when they find that, they just delete it. Oh, no. All right. Okay, so it's gone. Now, the first thing we're going to do here, and there's a reason that I'm doing it like this. We're going to end up with some warnings. By the time we finish, we won't have any errors, but if you look in here, right here in our component tree, we're going to have some warnings. All right? And part of it has nothing to do with us. It's some of the default sizes that Android makes some of these things. All right? So it makes it, and then it gives you a warning, and it says, hey, this thing you just made should be bigger. You know, so my original thought was, then why didn't you make it bigger? You know, for the default, but they don't. And it's not a big difference. I think when it makes it, it'll be like, I don't know if it's the width or the height. One of them is like 46.5 SP, and they say it should be at least 48. I said, then why didn't you make it 1.5 bigger? But they didn't. All right. Even though it's repetitive, the first thing we're going to do is you just click anywhere you want on your activity here, and we're going to go down, and we're going to find background. All right. It's under the all attributes, and we're going to click that upside down or on its side that says pick a resource. And if you look here, you're like, where's that stuff we saw yesterday? That ain't here. Yes, it is. If yours comes up with drawable right here, click color, and then you'll see it. All right. I'm just going to choose the light. In fact, I chose the purple before. I'm going to choose the light green. You can choose anything you want. You want to choose dark purple, choose dark purple. You want black with white writing, do that. I'm just going to choose this teal version that they have right here. And you can see immediately, you can see the change. All right. Now, you don't have to do that. I will tell you. All right. Just never, you know, I've said this kind of thing to you before. If, you know, I have seen quite a few games out here that are fairly intricate, and guess what? Their background is white. All right. And I've seen other things that are more textual in nature where their background is a different color. Oftentimes a dark color with lighter text, or an off-white or a cream or whatever with darker text. All right? So that's a start. The first thing we want to do is we want to come in here and take a text view and drag it right near the top. All right? We did this the other day. All right? Now, I think I've said this to you before, but my recommendation is as soon as you put something out there, immediately rename it. All right. I just think that's good practice. And the name here is the ID. You can see it up here. It's just called text view. All right. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to call it TV title. All right. Now, you almost always are going to get this. If you rename it right away, you really don't have to search in the comments and strings. See what I'm saying? It's up to you. It never hurts anything. You can check this. All right. And then notice there's a scope here. It says project file. If you click the down arrow, there's a bunch of other stuff. You shouldn't ever have to do anything other than the project file. All right. I've never chosen anything but project file. And then refactor. And boom, now it's changed. You can see up here it's TV title. All right. So the text right now says text view. We don't want that. So I'm going to highlight that text, hit enter. So all the text is gone. Again, I'm going to go way off to the right and click where it says pick a resource. And you've already seen this. We've got our title TV right there. So TV title and title TV. That's just the way I do it. Again, by no means do you have to do it that way. All right. So I'm going to do two more things. So I've got here BMI calculator. I'm going to go all the way down here. And now when you look, so far I've changed my ID to TV title and my text, all right, to @string title TV. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go down to where my text stuff is, which is most of the way down here. And I'm going to change a couple of other things here. All right. The first thing is I'm going to go to the text color that you see right there. And I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to click over again on the triangle, and I'm going to choose white. I may end up getting a warning for this. If Android thinks that either the colors are too similar to one another or they're too difficult to use them together, it gives you a warning. All right, but it says BMI calculator. That's fine. So that's good. Then I'm going to go down to text size, which is 14. And I'm going to change it to 24. And you can see the difference right away when I did that. Finally, right below that, I'm going to change the text style to bold. All right, and I'm going to do one more thing because we didn't do it yesterday. It doesn't help in this case to do it, but it doesn't hurt either. I'm going to go up right under text. I'm going to go to text alignment, and I'm going to set that to center. It doesn't change anything in here. But if we were to make that, to stretch that out, it's left justified by default. Now it'll stay like this. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, I'm going to go till 1:15 and we'll take our first break. So coming in here then, it looks like I've already got this. I'm going to totally remove. So I'm going to clear all my constraints. So I right mouse clicked on there and chose clear constraints of selection. So now there's nothing set up. I think you'd agree with that. If you remember yesterday, I told you, and we went and pinned stuff to the thing before it. We're not going to do it that way today, and I'll tell you why when we get to that point. So we're going to do it the other way. In other words, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drag it all the way up to the top. All right, now I've got a top constraint, but when I look in here, it literally is pinned right to the top. Typically, you want to give it at least like 8, so it's down a little bit. So I did that. Then I'm going to come and click on it again and click over here and drag, which moves it all the way over here. And then I'm going to click over here and I'm going to drag. Now that should center it on the screen. That's what it's supposed to do. That's its job. And right now I do have 3 constraints set up. All right. You'll notice that by default it sets these up to 0. I like to always make sure that it's set to at least 8. It's not going to affect really the way that it looks one way or the other. All right. But if I make that bigger later, all right, if I make it bigger later, there could be a problem. And we're going to look at this in just a little bit. I'd like you, if you would please, start going down under all attributes and find the letter M like Mary. And what I want you to realize is what I've got highlighted up there, and that's max lines. Because when we do this, we're going to have basically another one text view where we're going to put the person's height, the person's weight, the person's BMI, and the person's BMI status. But we're going to set max lines. See what I'm saying? This is a title, so there's no sense in doing that. But quite often, you would want to do that. That makes sense to everybody? All right. Now, we could come in here And we could put a label in by putting in another text view that says height, and then another one that says weight, and then we could put in, basically we could come in and put in our edit text. We could do that. We're not. This is what we're going to do. All right? We're going to go up to where it says text. So click over here on your palette. Click where it says text. All right? And we're going to do this twice, but let's do them one at a time. So I'd like you to come down here and find where it says number. So we went to palette. We chose text. I'm going to go to number, and I'm going to drag that out right there. All right, so now we've got a number field. And you'll notice by default there's nothing in it. We're going to fix that in just a second. Now, to do this, we are going to do, notice what it automatically did. It constrained it. All right, it gave it left and right constraints, but we're going to get rid of those because I want you to get used to constraining things yourselves. So the first thing I want you to do, and this is a little quirky because if you don't do it just right, it doesn't work the way you want it to work. So I'm going to click, I'm going to move this down a little bit like that. You don't have to do that. All right. But where I've got this, I'm going to click right here. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to drag it up. See that? All right. And notice, it didn't work the way I wanted it to work. What I want to happen is I want the constraints to show on here. So I want to be on this widget, but when I drag up, I want the constraints to show on here. Let me try it again. And then it says, now see, it still didn't work the way I wanted it to. If you make a mistake, you can do a Control-Z and back out of it. All right. It may just keep doing that, but typically what's going to happen is you're going to get a little dialog box that comes up. And it's going to say, okay, you want to constrain it to this particular control. Do you want to constrain it to the top or to the bottom? All right, you got yours. Good. That's good. If you all got it, that's fantastic. Always choose bottom, otherwise it's going to overload and put it right on top of the other one. All right, it's a dumb piece of software, so it's going to do what you tell it to do. All right? All right. Well, evidently I'm not dexterous enough to do it the right way. You can try it one more time.
I think if you drag it towards the middle of it instead of to the bottom, because it's, I think, yeah.
All right, there you go. Okay, see, I learned too. So, to the bottom. Now, it's automatically going to give it a size in here when you go and look at the picture. And it shows 52. I'm going to change all of these. I'm going to make it fairly close together, so I'm going to put a 12 in there. And you can see it's pretty close right now. All right, so I made it 12. And then I'm going to constrain both the left and the right. All right, so I've got that done. This is going to be the edit text for my height. So I'm going to go back up to the ID, and I could have done that first, but I'm going to call that little et and the word height with a capital H. All right, hit enter. Again, I get this thing. Yeah, I do want it to go change everything, so refactor. All right. And now we can come in, and with this highlighted, we can go down to hint. Click that thing to show the resource, and there's our height hint right there. Like I said, to me, doing it this way, at a moment's glance, I can almost always pick out which one I want. So there's height hint, and now I've got that. And you'll notice it says input height 12 to 96. That's what I want. All right. Now, it is possible that I could go and highlight this control right now. I could do a Control-C and a Control-V and just make a copy of it. All right. I've had problems doing that. Sometimes it works with no problem. Sometimes I have problems doing that. But maybe that's just me. So I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to grab another one of these numbers, and I'm going to put another one right below the one I just put in. This is going to be for my weight. So this time I'll come in, and first I will change the name of this to ET weight with a capital W, and I will tell it to refactor. All right. Then, again, I'm going to clear out all my constraints, and I'm going to reset them manually. To the bottom. All right. And again, I'm going to put 12 below there. You may decide as you're going through this, I made it too big, I made it too small, etc. I wouldn't go lower than 8. All right, that's 8 pixels, but that's an individual call. All right, if you have to start putting stuff 2 and 3 pixels away, you might have too much stuff on your screen, just so you're aware of that. All right, so with this in here, I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to go down to hint. I'm going to click over off on the right, and now I'm going to choose weight hint. So now I've got these in there. Now, if you care, you may not care, but we're going to do 2 more things, and then we're taking a break. All right? So I think I can highlight, when I highlight both of them, sometimes it only affects one and it doesn't affect the other. So I'm going to do them both one at a time. So I'm going to click first on this where it says input height. I'm going to go down to my text, and I'm going to do 2 things. All right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change the color in here as well. So I'm going to change that like we did before to white. Now you'll notice it does not change that color because it's a hint. Hint color always comes up as gray by default. All right, then I'm going to go, the text size is 18. That isn't bad. I can change it later if I want to. But I'm going to change the style to bold. And you'll notice again, since that's a hint, it doesn't show. Finally, again, just because I'm this way, I'm going to go up to text alignment and set it to center. All right? Now it does look like it did center. That one did take effect. And I'm going to do the same thing to my other one. So again, I'm going to come to my ET weight and do the same stuff that we just did. In other words, it doesn't, with the order what you do, these doesn't matter. I'm going to set the alignment to center. All right. I'm going to set the color, again, to white. The size is still 18, and that's fine. And I'm going to set the text style to bold. All right. So we've got that. Now, it's 1:14, so I'll tell you what, we'll do this right now, but then we'll finish it after the break. And that is, I want you to go up here to where it says buttons, click on button, and bring out 3 buttons. We are going to have a calculate button, a clear button, and an exit button. So don't worry if they're lined up or not lined up, etc. Again, if when we do this, if you run it, you go, you know what, man, purple looks really bad with green, then change the color of them. It's the background color. I don't care. All right? But I'm just going to leave mine the way they are. So it is now 1:15. Let's come back, please, at 1:30.
Could you remind me how to hide this one?
All right, it's a little bit early, but let's just start up anyway, all right? And you can do this on your own. You can watch me do it. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to click on my first button here, and what do I want to do to it? Again, first, just get used to doing this because it's a better idea. That is, I'm going to set it. This is going to be my BTN calculate button. So I've renamed it. I'm going to get rid of the text that's on it, and I'm going to, oh, yeah, I want to refactor. Okay. All right, then I'm going to go over here, get rid of the text, go over here to add a resource, and choose my calculate BMI button. So it says calc, boom. You can see the size changed. All right, and then I'm actually just going to set up all 3 of my buttons, and then I will go back and I will do my constraints. So the second button is going to be clear. So I'm going to change the name to BTN clear. And I'm going to get rid of the text that's in it. and I'm going to set it to my clear BTN. So now that one's done. And then finally I'm going to do the same thing with the exit one. So it'll be BTN exit, get rid of the text. Oops, yep, I'm going to refactor. Get rid of the text, and again, set that to my exit BTN. All right, so I've got those. Now, with what I'm going to show you, some people won't agree with the way that I'm showing you this. Some will. It's not really that big of a thing. But there's a couple things that I want to do. All right? The first thing is, I'm going to click on the Calculate button, and I'm just going to drag it all the way over to the end. All right, so I put in that constraint. And I can do the same thing with my Exit button. I'm going to move that one all the way over to the end. Now, that's not where I want them. Okay? Now, notice the next thing I'm going to do, and it doesn't matter which direction you do it in, but I'm going to go to my Calculate button, and I'm going to drag over to my Clear button. And you'll notice it's moved over a little bit now. Then I'm going to go over to my Exit button, and I'm going to drag over to my Clear button. And now it's not totally fine, but it's much better than it was. All right? If I decide that, now I can come over here, I can click on my Calculate button, I can come over here, and I'm going to set this to 8. And then I'm going to take the next one. Look on your screen, please, because we've always just been setting the top one to the left one. I'm going to set the right one. All right? And I'm going to set it to 16. Okay? So I've set this one to 8 and this one to 16. Sometimes you eyeball these things. Sometimes you do them other ways. It's not that big a thing one way or the other. All right? Then I'm going to go over to my Clear button. And this one, all I care about right now is that area that's in here. So there's not really anything I want to do in here yet. We're going to make a change in a minute. But then I'm going to go over to my Exit button. And since I made that one 8, I'm going to make this one 8. All right? And then this constraint now to the left, I'm again going to make that one 16. All right? Again, it sure as heck isn't perfect. All right? But what I want to do now is I want to go and take each one of these buttons. Did you lose your stuff or what?
I think you took my copy. Maybe. Is this?
Okay. If I did, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Now what I want to do with each one of these is I want to go and click, and I want to set the top constraint. You can see what a pain in the butt it is unless you do it right. Because I'll do this one first. And I want to set it again to the bottom. All right? All right? Now, if I'm looking in here, this isn't exactly perfect. See this? So I might want to go in and change that. You can leave it. You can change it. I would tell you that for your final project, make it look really nice. All right? Do what you can to make it look really nice. Now, when I'm looking here, so what do I have? I can come in here and say my distance to the left. All right? So right here, I'm going to grab my constraint to the left. Come on. There we go. And now it's set to 32. I'm going to change that to 24. And then I'm going to grab the one that we've got over here, and I'm going to set that to 24. Still isn't perfect, all right? So there's all sorts of ways that you can set this stuff. You can manually move it if you want to. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do. Right now, it by no means is perfect, but it's going to do for what I'm working on, all right? Finally, we got one more thing we want to add here. We want to add one more text view. So I'm going to go back to text, I'm going to grab the text view, and I'm going to put it down below, right here. All right, right there. And as we did before, I'm going to first pin left, then I'm going to pin right, then I'm going to pin up, to the bottom of that, all right? Now this is where we're going to put our final stats. You understand what I'm saying? So this is going to say height, and then give our height, weight, and give our weight, BMI, and give our BMI, and status, and give our status. So I've already mentioned this to you before. But the first thing is I want to do here is I want to change the name of this to TV results. Again, you don't like my name, use your own names. It's totally fine. But TV results, because it's a text view, and it's going to hold the results. And then I'm going to remove the text from it. I'm going to go back and click way off to the right, and I'm going to find my... I know we had it over here someplace. Results hint. All right. Now, right now it's in text because I screwed up. We don't want to put that results text in the text. We want to put it in the hint. We don't want there to be text in there. So I'm going to just do a Control X to highlight it, go down to hint, and then paste it in. All right. Two more things I want to do here, maybe more than two, but at least two. One is I want to go down, I showed you this a bit before, go down to max lines, and I'm going to set it, I always set it one more than I need. So even though I only need 4, I'm setting it to 5 anyway. All right. So I set max lines to 5. And I'm going to go down and again, go down to my text. And I'm going to change the size. All right, 16 should be big enough. If you want, you can make it 8 or 20 or whatever. Okay, I'll make it 20. I guess that's better. And I'm going to make the text style bold again. I'm going to make the text color white again. All right, and I'm going to make the text alignment centered. Again, you're not turning this in. This is another practice exercise. So if you decide you want to play with it, just change it any way you want. This is totally fine, though, the way that it is. All right, again, it isn't perfect, but what I want us to do now is to take a look at our component tree. And you'll notice that every control has got something that it doesn't like. So let's look at what those are. So first is TV title. If I double click on it, well, usually it brings something up and it's not. So if you double click on the warning sign there, it says insufficient text color contrast ratio. So again, it's telling me that there's not enough difference in my colors. Well, I'm just going to, you can tell it to ignore by clicking the ignore button, okay? And then that went away. All right. Then I'm going to go down because I think the buttons are the same thing, but I could be wrong. All right, so I'm going to tell it to ignore that one. And I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to tell it to ignore that button. And I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to tell it to ignore that one. Now, there are people who would say, well, you shouldn't be ignoring those warnings. And my answer would be the same kind of thing I've told you before. When you make your own app, then you do whatever the hell you want to do with colors. But this is what I'm doing with the one that I've got. All right. So what's left? Well, we got our results here. And that one says the same thing, so I'll tell that to be ignored. So now I'm down to these two, the height and the weight. So if I double click on the first one, it says touch target size too small. It says the item's height is 45 dp. Consider making it 48 or larger. If I double click, all right, so I double clicked on it under the fix, and I'm going to do it again, and it made each one of them a little bit bigger. Now, I still have something here, and it says, again, the insufficient text color to contrast ratio. Tell it to ignore that, and there's still some other stuff. There's a thing here that talks about autofill. Autofill is, for lack of better words, is the equivalent of what we had on HTML forms with autocomplete. It's not exactly the same. All right? Now, how do we fix that? Well, first thing we should do, because we don't know what the hell that is we come over to developer.android.com. We come in there, and once it comes up, we do a search. And we search for autofill. And you can see there's a lot of different stuff in here for it. All right, I don't even know which one of these would be best, to be honest with you. I don't like it just taking a quick look at it. So I'm going to just go to Google and I'm going to type in Android autofill example. All right. And you'll notice there is one here that's under developer.android. It says the sample app provides an autofill. So let's look. So I'm just going to start whizzing my way through here, and I want to look for an example because I want to see if they've changed it. All right. So it says autofill hints equal password. Well, it used to be you could just, it was either yes or no, or else it was true or false that you put in there. That's what I was looking for. I'm going to try this, and it may or may not work, but that's okay. If it doesn't, I'll just back it out. But I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click on this first one, and I'm going to go over to code mode. All right? And this is my first edit text right here. And right before the end of it, I'm going to type in here the word autofill, and you'll notice there's autofill hints. And I'm going to hit tab. All right? And it says, what do you want right there? Well, I mean, what is that? It's the height, but I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I'll just leave it in there as height. See what I did? I'm going to do the next one too. So I could just copy this, but I'm going to come down here to the other edit text, which is my weight, and I'm going to type in the word autofill, and you'll see it finds two instances of it. I want the first one, so I hit tab, and I'm going to set this to weight. All right. One thing you may or may not have noticed this if you look up on the screen, text view, edit text, button, 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 text view. It put them in the order in which I created them. All right? It didn't necessarily put them in the order that they are. It put them in the order I've created them. In fact, you don't have to look, but on the handout I gave you with the XML file, they're not in that order, because I made some changes from what I had originally. All right, so I'm going to come in here and do a file, save all, and jump back into design mode. And it still doesn't like something with the hot weight on mine. It says that color ratio again. Double click on it to ignore. There. Now all of my warnings are gone. And again, I'm not going to lie to you and go, man, isn't this a frickin' beautiful interface? It works. All right. In fact, this is the point, because we're about to go and change over to Java, that I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to run it. All right? Never a bad thing to do if you after you build the interface to run it, and at least see if it looks the way you want it to look. And then I'm going to tell you real quick what happened when I tried to do this morning. So there it is. Oh, well, there it is. Well, it was there for a second. So there it is. Again, by no means is it beautiful, but it's functional, which is what I'm looking for more than anything else. And notice I can come in here and type. And also, please notice the keyboard. It is a numeric keyboard. All right? So I could come in there. I have no code in there yet, and the buttons don't do a darn thing, but it's functional. That's more what I'm looking for than anything else. So I'm going to close this, and now I'm going to go, and for the rest of the period today, we're going to go over to our main activity.java and see how much we can put in. Now, I am not going to add any of the comments that I gave you on here. I just don't want to take the time to do that. It sure as heck wouldn't be a bad idea to add some of those comments, but I think it's good enough that hopefully it'll be good enough for you that it'll work. All right. Then I'm sorry. Then
No, you're good.
No, then see if yours is here then.
No, because mine was sitting up here.
All right. Well, then grab this one and I'll grab that one. I don't care. But I don't have.
Yeah, that's right there.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So, taking it from the top. All right. Again, we're going to have stuff that's going to be added after this import statement for us. Okay? And I'm just saying this to you again. The way that we're going to frame this is like this. Look on the screen, please. Where my cursor is right now, right up above the override line. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our constants. Then we're going to put in our variables. Then we're going to come into here and we're going to do the equivalent of initializing our widgets, those variables. And then we're going to start calling different routines. Does all that make sense? All right. So I'm going to come in here. I will put comments in, but not many. So the first thing, like I said, is height constants. Feel free to change these. Again, you're not turning this stuff in anyway. And you probably have already noticed the height and weight constants are virtually identical. So once you put in the first ones, you're probably best off just copying it, changing all the H's to W's, and change the amounts too accordingly. So just put everything down to the bottom of the page. So when you get to line 48, we'll just pick it up there in just a couple minutes.
Can you remind me how to access this page? The one with the text view and text?
Yes. Just on your activity main, come up here and click code.
Alright, thank you.
So hopefully there's nothing in there that doesn't make sense to anybody as far as the constants and as far as the accumulators. Now these accumulators, just so you know, will have an exit button. When we click the exit button, we're done doing BMIs. So we're going to have a toast that's going to come at the bottom of the screen that's going to have the total, and it'll say total number underweight people, colon, then a number, total number of optimal weight people, etc. So that's what we'll do at the end. That's what we'll program into our exit button. These bad height and bad weights, these are hopefully at least are both going to handle putting in a value that's out of range or leaving it blank. All right? And there is an issue with that right now, but we're going to resolve it. I'm not worried about it. All right, so I'm on the back of the first page, and I'm down now into the onCreate routine. I always put this comment in here, and it just says, get references to program widgets. Again, as I said yesterday, I'm opening up the means of communication now. All right, so I'm going to say ET height equals, and if you type in find, it finds the find view by ID, hit tab, and it's r.id.et height. As I mentioned, this is the name that it's referred to in the XML file. This is the word, the name I'm going to refer to it in my code. That should make sense to all of you. All right, they do not have to be the same name. I just find that it's more convenient when you make them the same name. That's all. Looks like with me, I didn't change the name of my calculate button. I want to check real quick. I did not. It's still called button. All right, for now, I'm going to stop right here. Are people starting to get, when I say this, forms of communication, are you understanding that this is linking up Java with XML? Does that make sense to everybody? And this is just the same way that we used to call the focus method in C#, but here it's request focus. All right, and there's other request things that you can do too, but we want the focus to be there. Now, I put in here before, you can say this, but at start of app, you don't have to say it. You don't have to put any comments in here at all. I will expect that you will put in at least a few comments, all right, in your in the apps that you do. Now, if you use good variable names, all right, especially, then the number of comments you'll probably put in there will be minimal. If you use sucky variable names, then I expect that you're going to have a lot of comments in there. All right, and I will tell you again, because I've looked at thousands of lines of real live application code, and by and large, you laugh, but it is sucky. It's amazing the number of people who have 10 variables and call them A through J, and have nothing in there as far as, you know, what they're doing. Well, why'd you do that? Well, I didn't want to type. But now, today, virtually, whether you got IntelliSense everywhere, all right, that really shouldn't be an issue anymore. All right, so now we're going to write the driver. But before we do that, this is what I want you to do, if you would, please. So just type in here, like I've got, public void, and I really should line this up with that one. In fact, hold on, because that is not in here. It's its own routine. So public void, and I just called it Bmi driver. Doesn't need anything. Oh, it needs that view, I'm sorry. View, and you can call this, sometimes you almost always see it either called view V or view with a big and a little view. All right, doesn't matter which way you do it. So Alt Enter, there it is. Now, I'm going to stop right here, look on the screen if you would please. I showed you this before, but I want to prove it to you now. And that is, I'm going to go back to my activity main file. I'm going to click on my calculate button. I'm going to go down to the on-click routine. And I'm going to click the down arrow, and notice there's main activity there, and there's Bmi driver. All right, I want Bmi driver. Now, what sometimes, especially you'll find this a lot in books, all right, and what people will do is stuff like this in books. I'm just going to show it to you, but I'm not going to be doing this kind of thing. That is, they'll come in here, and then they'll come here, and in this driver thing, I don't know what I just did. That was interesting. Now I've got my screen split. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. Move that up here. There we go. All right, but what people will do is they'll come down here. Remember our SOUT, our system out print line? Remember that from regular Java? They'll just come in here and put in something that says like in Bmi driver. That's called a stub. And what should happen now is if I run, I'm going to get rid of it right away. But if I run the program again, I can double check, click that button, and make sure that down here on the bottom of my screen, in my terminal area, that it says that. So I'm sure that it's linking the stuff up correctly. I've got some, I'm feeling like it is going to be. So, all right. So I'm going to come in and just put in all the stuff. So please put in all the code from lines 73 down to the bottom of the page here. So it's about 25 lines or so. Again, if you don't want to put in the comments, don't put in any comments. I will tell you, look on the screen, please. Hopefully you can all see this okay. Where am I? Well, you won't see it on here. But if you look on yours, look on your handout, okay? Do you notice how it says string status, int height, int weight, and notice how I initialize that? The reason I initialize that is that's being used later in the program in a check. And even though it's supposed to be getting initialized here, If you don't put that in, you get a warning that says, hey, you may be using an uninitialized variable. But if I go back in here and I put in, for example, here, if I say equals 0, immediately, almost, all right, string, I'm not sorry, if equals the empty string, almost immediately what's going to happen is I'm going to get a warning over here that says that's redundant. All right? Usually I just do it all the time anyway. I mean, it doesn't really hurt one way or the other. So, but I'm going to just do it the way that it is in the handout that I gave you. You probably have already figured this out, but if you look up on the screen here, these are red because we haven't written them yet. All right, but there's a couple things I wanted to mention in here. So if you look down here, you'll notice, again, we're using a getter. All right, and remember, when you work with strings in Java, you don't use a double equal sign. You use the dot equals method. So this says, if there's nothing in that text box, I'm going to set this variable that's called bad height inputted to no height input. That was one of our constants up above that will say no height inputted. We haven't checked to see if it's within range yet. That's what this is going to do. Now, we do it for height and we do it for weight. Now notice, these two lines are the same. Lines 69 and 75 are the same. If we screw up and put nothing in for the height and nothing in for the weight, it's already set to true. But I'm just setting it again. It's not going to hurt anything. it's possible one of what? One of four things, right? Or one of three things. Either neither is set, both are set, or one is set and the other one isn't set, right? Isn't that the possibilities? So if one of those two is bad, meaning there's nothing in there, that bad flag is going to be true, so I'm going to call build bad output string. You might not like my names, but they're the ones I used. Guess what? If everything works, I call build good output string. All right? There's nothing magical about those names. It's just what I happen to choose. All right? Now, when we call validate the inputted height, all right, does it make sense to everyone? I'm asking you this. It must return an int. Does that make sense? Because we're sticking it into the height, which we defined at the top of our program to be an int. All right? So if you turn the page over and you look now at what's next in here, the next thing we say is if height equals 0. So that goes right underneath this. So if height equals 0. Now, before we even go look at this routine, you might look at it, wait a minute. If it's 0, what does that mean? What I'm doing is, inside of this routine, please look up on the screen. In this routine, if you put in a number that's less than 12 or that's greater than 96, I'm returning 0. That's why I check for it here. All right? So it's very similar to what you found in like C# when we called certain methods, and if it didn't find something or whatever, it returned -1. I could have done that too and just made it -1. All right, I just made it 0. Okay. And you'll notice here, I'm giving it a message, there wasn't anything input. Here I'm going to give it a message, there was input, but it was out of range. All right? So can you, when you look at it, can you understand the logic of what's going on? And again, this is just one way of doing it. Nothing gives me more pleasure, and I'm being serious, is when I give you guys a test and everybody gets it to work, but you all did it in a little different way. That's good. All right? And sometimes when you do this, you think outside the box, and you're like, you know, and maybe I've told you about this because I'll always remember that the first true programming class I took, I got the program done, but they wanted you to format in a certain way, and it didn't look right. It was a thing to amortize a loan. All right, and I thought I could make it better. So I asked my teacher, can I do it on my own? And he goes, yeah, but make a copy of yours, which was a good idea because I screwed it up. But, you know, he gave me extra points because he said you were the only one who thought outside the box. All right? And he said, now, if you had done that and not asked me first, I would have taken off because it didn't look the way it was supposed to. But you came to me and said that I never have a problem with you guys doing that. I look at it that what you're given for requirements are minimum requirements. And if you want to take those and kind of silly putty them and either add something or stretch them a little bit, I have no problem with you doing that. All right, so if I get down to here, I had a height. There was a number in there. We don't know if it's valid or not yet, but we have a number in there. If I get down to here, not only did I have a height, but it was valid, and now I've got a number for the weight. If I get down to here, I've got a valid height and a valid weight. That's why the next line that you see, it's line 116, all right, says BMI equals. If it bugs you that you've got all this red, just take those lines and comment them out. All right? But don't be like me, because I commented one out this morning and I couldn't find the one I commented out. All right? So there's that. So I'm asking, is there anything that's in this, what I call BMI driver, is there anything in there that doesn't make sense? This is your time to ask. All right? Again, we got a lot of red. We're going to start doing it right away. So the next thing we're going to write is validate the input and height. So, once we do that, the stuff that's in there, those calls should go away. So that should go away in just a minute. And then that'll go away. All right? And again, I've said this before. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. But validate the input and height and validate the input and weight are exactly the same if you change all of the H's to W's. All right? They should work. I think it's exactly the same. looking at the validate the height and validate the inputted height and validate the inputted weight, is there anything in there that doesn't make sense? You've done this kind of thing before. All right, one of the things I'm trying to impress upon you is the language changes, the syntax changes, the logic remains the same. All right? Looking at this one right here, this should be very straightforward because it's one line of code. This is the calculation for BMI, all right? And you'll notice what I did too is I took the weight and I cast it. That's a casting right there. So I'm making sure that it's a double. All right, and I did that. I want to make sure that when I divide this by this, remember it's going to do the division first, then the multiplication. I want to make sure if it was an int divided by an int, it would throw away the decimal portion. This way it won't do that. I could also, if I wanted to, with math.pow, I don't know if it would take it if I would cast that. I don't remember, but that's fine. And I can even, I think on here, on the one I gave you, I put in a 0.0 here to be sure. Yeah. How about the determining the string? Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Make sure when you do that, not only do you set the stuff correctly, but that you are incrementing the correct counter. All right. Typically, when you do that, you're going to either go from lowest to highest or highest to lowest. In this case, it made sense to me to go from lowest to highest. so you guys are even faster than I thought you'd be, so we'll finish this today. Maybe I mentioned this to you, maybe I didn't, but if you look on the screen here, you notice there's a bunch of these yellow things. Those are my warnings. I think I said that, but if you look up on the very top in the upper right-hand corner, it's got that, bless you, it's got that same thing as before. If I put my mouse there, it says I've got 13 warnings and 15 typos. There are no typos in here, but there is no word in the dictionary called min obese. So it's flagging that as being a typo. All right?
eventually.
You're right. That probably would help, wouldn't it, if I wanted to do so? And honest to goodness, I was going to remind you guys of that. Well, I'm the one who needs reminding. Yeah, make sure you go to your clear button, go to your on-click event. Choose your clear the GUI, and then go to your exit, go to your on-click event, and choose your exit the program, or exit program, I guess it is. Save it and run it again. I believe there's an error when you put in the invalid values. It's not doing it correctly. I'll have to take a look at that. So. Does everybody notice that there's some stuff missing in here? When I created the widgets, I left off these two, because I added that later. Since that's not there, it's also not in here. See what I'm talking about? All right. So, let's see. I'll try to fix this up by tomorrow, but I wanted to show you one thing, and that is I went back and rewrote buttons the other way because I want you to see this. So I will print off this page, if nothing else, for you later so you can see it. But if you look over here, what we did was not considered for whatever reason to be as clean a way. We went into the on-click routine and just set it up there. The other way of doing it is to come in here, and typically you do this, I believe, in your on-create, at least that's where I did it, and you do this. This is setting an on-click listener right there. So what this is saying is once I click the button that says clear, you should call the clear the GUI routine. When I click the one that's called exit, you should call exit program. And when I click the one, where's the first one? Do I not have? It's in there, so there it is. And here was the first one. So when you click the button that says calculate, call BMI driver. And just because I'm a little anal about this, I'm going to change the positioning around there. Now, it works as far as if you put in valid data, but there's a problem with it now if you put nothing in there, so my check must be wrong. And it's also not printing out the error when I put in something out of range. And for whatever reason, now my exit button stopped working. It worked this morning, but it's not working now, so I'm going to go look at all that stuff right now. I figured you'd rather do this today rather than going over 104 pages of junk. All right? So tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon rather, we will start by finishing up the rest of Unit 1. Then we'll take a look at that code lab, and we'll take one last quick look at your homework. So you will have probably a good 2 hours, if not more, tomorrow to work on the homework. And you will have all of Friday to work on the homework. All right? So the plan is, at least for most of these chapters, we're either going to modify a program we've been working on, or we're going to do a new program. All right, I like doing that before I start going in and actually lecturing, because I think it makes it easier, at least in my opinion, makes it easier to understand what we'll be lecturing on.
the show doesn't return anything at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a void.
This
Yeah, the show.
in there?
No, at the show, that dot show returns void. It
Right.
doesn't return anything.
Right.
So you're putting nothing. in the
Ah, so you say because I'm assigning it to T? Or what?
T. Yeah. So instead make T like, you got it right before, didn't you?
Yeah, no, but it wasn't printing, so I just
Oh, it
was
wasn't printing?
jacking around with it. Nope.
Huh.
Word thing is it work
On the
this?
paper, you just have string OS now. You don't have a view key. It's just string OS.
No, I know. I tried it both ways just to see if it was doing anything.
That's-
Didn't like it with it, it didn't like it without it.
You also set 2 equal to the
Yep.
that make
I played with this. You can do this so many different ways.